They don't post the real job online. They post a shadow of it, 2 sentences if you count the hyphen. Discreet security personnel needed. Vatican City night shift. Exceptional pay. Confidentiality agreement required. If you've ever pulled gates on a forward operating base at 0300, exceptional pay reads like hazard pay with a tuxedo on. I sent my resume, kept my expectations low, and got a call the next day from a man who introduced himself as Father Michel. No last name, no small talk. "Mr. Carter," he said, "do you value rules?" "I value going home in one piece," I said. "Good," he replied. "Please bring a pen you trust." The interview was a hallway, not an office. Stone that held the night like a secret. We walked past framed maps and bronze plaques that didn't explain anything. He asked about my service, my temper, and a time I didn't rise to a provocation. I told him about a checkpoint in Coast Province where patients beat pride and saved a kid with a soccer ball. He nodded. "Discipline over impulse," he said. "You'll need that." He stopped at a wooden door, old enough to smell like history when it opened. Inside, a small room with a desk, a lamp, and a leather folder that looked heavier than it should. He placed it in front of me with both hands, like it might shatter if he let it fall. "Read these," he said, aloud. The pages were thick, the kind you don't bend by accident. The text repeated in Italian, Latin, English, and scripts I couldn't place, lines that felt like they were watching me back. "Rule 1, I read. Never look directly at their faces. Keep your eyes on their feet or hands." Again, he said. I read it again. Then a third time because he didn't blink. "Rule 2. Always announce yourself before entering any room. Wait for acknowledgement." Again, he said. "By Rule 5, never turn your back on more than one at a time. Count constantly." My chest had the steady, slow ache of a timed ruck. I set the page down. He slid a pen toward me, a simple black ballpoint. "This is your copy," he said. "Sign that you understand." I signed the way I recheck a safety on a loaded weapon, twice. He folded the folder closed and finally breathed like a man satisfied. "Your first night is tonight," he said. "You'll stand post outside the conference hall from midnight to 4. Eyes on hands and feet. Announce at every threshold, 2 meters of space at all times." He paused. "And count, Mr. Carter. I won't always be there to help you count." "What am I counting?" I asked. "Presence," he said. "Yours, theirs, and the distance between. Midnight in certain buildings feels like a choice someone made 1,000 years ago to let darkness do some of the policing. The corridor to the hall had lights dimmed to what I'd call chapel low, not off, not on, enough to keep your soul honest. The marble floor held old cool like a lake bed. My flashlight sat in my belt, not in my hand. The radio on my shoulder hissed a friendly static that reminded me it had my back. I planted at the marked position, exactly 3 tiles left of the hall doors. Father Michel stood with me for the countdown. No pep talk. Just a thermos he uncapped and handed over. Coffee the color of midnight that decided to work a shift. "You will hear them before you see them," he said. "Remember your words, remember your eyes." "At my post," I said. "Eyes down. Announce, count." He dipped his head, a priest's salute to competence, and then he left the way the ocean leaves a beach, present in the sound even after it's gone. At 11:59, the corridor didn't get quieter, it got truer. Sounds separate themselves at that hour. You hear what belongs and what arrived with you. I heard my breath steady into 4s. I heard the radiator sigh like an old man finding the right chair. And then I heard footsteps, layered like a song someone wrote without melody. Some walked heel, toe, leather on stone, the civilized cadence of expensive shoes that have never missed a polish. Some slid, the shush-shush of fabric against marble as if the ground and the wearer had a private agreement. Some clicked, bare nails on stone, small tap-taps that made my molars feel the sound. Eyes down, hands and feet only. The first pair of shoes hit my peripheral like a knife edge, a mirror polish you could drift a flashlight beam across and see it come back ashamed. The shoes slowed near my post. I kept my gaze parked on the leather and the tile between us. 2 meters is a distance your body knows after enough training. Mine knew it like a prayer. Security present, I said. Permission to maintain post. The shoes angled just a quarter turn. The voice came from above them, a precise baritone run through a filter I can only call older than smoke. Acknowledged, it said. They moved on. I counted 1. Next came sandals, not beach junk. Ancient, bred for honest miles sandals bound with dark strips that didn't reflect light so much as drink it. The feet inside were wrong only in the way they made me think of deserts that haven't seen rain in a century. They did not slow. I said my line. The sandals did not speak. 2. Then bare feet. The nails, long, neatly maintained, a pianist's pride in 10 instruments that didn't need lacquer. They clicked. The clicks were not random. Patterns live behind the obvious. Da 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 da. 3. Gliding came next. Fabric heavy enough to have ancestry drifted past my post, trailing a cold lilt in the air. The hem barely kissed the floor, but something above it displaced space the way heat does off asphalt. I said my line anyway. The glide paused, breath like a winter draft. Noted. A voice said in perfect, accentless English that somehow still wasn't born here. 4. They kept coming. Shoes that looked like they paid property tax. Boots thick-soled enough to swallow sound. A set of feet I didn't want to assign to anything I've met. Small scales that caught what little light there was and made it insist on being seen. Those paused. The voice above them arrived a half second after the air shifted. You count, it said, not a question. I count, I said. Good, keep doing that. They moved on. 5. The door closed at exactly 12:04 and the corridor exhaled. My radio clicked once. Status, Father Michel asked. Conference in session, I said. 5 counted. Carry on. Carry on is the most American sentence I know. It means we trust you and we trust the rules that built you. I walked my patrol route, 4 corridors in a rectangle, 2 rooms at each corner. A storage closet, a break room no one breaks in, a small chapel with chairs like folded hands, and a first aid alcove whose cabinet hung open a respectful inch. At each threshold I announced presence. At each turn I scanned floor to waist. I logged temperature, 58 degrees at 12:30, 55 by 1 a.m. Condensation filmed the windows in the east corridor and decided to bead into lines. I watched one line drag into a curve that made no sense and then suddenly did. The Arabic numeral 5 written by a finger that never touched glass. I didn't write that. I told the radio, because saying so out loud made the room forget to be afraid. Static hummed like approval. I kept moving. At 1:22, I met a pair of bare feet by the window that faced the gardens. The toes were plentiful, more than 10. You think that's the part that would ruin you. It isn't. What ruins you is they were beautiful in the way a spider's web is beautiful when you're not the fly. Clean, precise, designs where the rest of us keep accidents. Security present, I said. Permission to maintain route. The feet turned a degree toward me. The voice above them had the tired patience of a surgeon. Acknowledged, it said. Guard. It's one thing to be noticed. It's another to be cataloged. At 2:04, my flashlight proved it wanted to be taken seriously. I touched the button and it jumped to full, then cut out, then strobed like a club for the damned. I holstered it and went to manual mode, small backup lamp, low beam kept on the floor. The world looks honest from ankle height. At 2:37, the restroom spoke, not the pipes, the stall, second from the wall. The porcelain had a reverb that made the voice sound like it had a partner. Security presence acknowledged, it said. Two voices in one, not harmony. A shadow and its echo disagreeing politely. I didn't investigate. Investigating is curiosity, and curiosity is death without the courtesy of surprise. I logged it, marked the time, and walked. Always walk. Running says you've decided you lost. By 4, the air pressure changed. The way buildings announced departures. Door opened. The shoes led. The sandals followed. The clicks organized themselves into something like satisfaction and something like threat, which is how a lot of things leave rooms. The scaled feet paused at my post again. The voice didn't bother pretending it needed volume to be heard. You follow instructions well, it said. Thank you, I said, because Rule 4 loves short sentences. Father Michel chose wisely. They went. I counted them back out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Counting out isn't the same as counting in. You listen for subtraction that adds up wrong. The corridor returned to the Vatican. It is when it's just a city that outlived emperors. Father Michel arrived with coffee and a smile that lived only in his eyes. Report, he said. I gave him the route, the times, the anomalies, condensation numerals, restroom voice, flashlight misbehavior. He listened the way good priests do, like truth is a guest he's seen before. Excellent, he said. You'll do this again next month. I should have asked questions then. Most people would. But the rules had lengthened my life by 4 hours, and gratitude is a discipline too. Months don't pass on calendars when you work nights. They pass as hands and feet, temperatures and tiles. You learn gates the way bartenders learn faces. I knew the leather shoes by their refusal to squeak. I knew the sandals by their dignity. I knew the clicks by an impatience that respected the rules even as it wished them dead. And I knew the scaled feet by the pause they left in the air, like a bowing that never needed my eyes. I built rituals. Numbers live inside rituals and keep people honest. I checked the elevator. It sometimes took trips alone, doors opening to present nobody to nobody. I measured the corridor's breadth, because buildings breathe when we make them hold too much. I scribbled notes in a little green book whose paper felt like it wanted to keep secrets. I announced myself to rooms that had nothing inside them and waited for acknowledgement that never came, because obeying the rule matters more when you don't have to. On the 4th month, a new guy showed up with the wrong grin. Civilian contractor like me. Younger by a decade, older by 2 bad decisions, the kind of man who calls rules suggestions and calls you buddy before he knows your name. I'm Sal, he said. How bad can a Vatican night shift be? Depends what you look at, I said. He laughed. I only look at paychecks. Father Michel gave him the folder and made him read. By never turn your back on more than one, Sal's grin had turned into a smile someone else left behind. He signed. He said the right words. And then the night tested him. We took first patrol together. The fountain at the end of the south corridor can be seen from the corner if you don't get cute. Someone stood there back to us, the fabric of their garment thick enough to have an accent. Sal walked up without announcing. Hey, everything good? He said like we were in a bar asking if the TV's too loud. The figure turned a fraction. I saw Sal's shoulders stiffen like he'd found a cliff with his toes. His breath made a new sound, not fear, recognition, the kind that hurts. I stepped in, eyes on the tiles. "Security present," I said, firm and flat. "Two personnel. Request permission to maintain route." "Acknowledged," the figure said, turning back to the water. "Train your partner better." We walked. Sal didn't. He moved his legs, but walking is something else. At the post, he looked 20 degrees colder. "What did you see?" I asked. He shook his head. "Rules exist for good reasons," he said, voice parked on the shoulder of a highway it didn't want to merge back onto. He requested a transfer to day shift before dawn and got it. Day shift's a different religion. I went back to working alone. It didn't feel like solitude. It felt like an agreement. You adjust to the strange the way you adjust to an old injury. You learn the weather that makes it complain and you plan around it. The meetings kept their rhythm. Midnight arrival, 4-hour session, dawn exit. The corridor learned my steps and stopped trying to surprise me. I stopped trying to surprise it back. On the 8th month, Father Michel called me to an office that had windows. Windows are for conversations where you need to see the world you're trying not to break. "Next week is different," he said, pouring 2 cups of wine like it was a memo you drink. "Additional attendees. The meeting may run long, and there may be visitors not party to the regular arrangement." He slid a second set of instructions across the desk. Same heavy paper. Different tone. Special protocol. If asked to deliver a message, decline and refer. If physical altercations, radio, don't intervene. If offered gifts, decline and report. If electrical systems malfunction, manual backup lighting only. If you smell sulfur or burning metal, evacuate and call the number. "These exist because territorial disagreements occur," he said almost gently. "Different interests, usually resolved peacefully." "Usually," I repeated. He nodded once. "Rules are what make usually possible." I could have said, "Yes, Father." I said what I meant. "I'll be ready." "Good," he said. "Bring the pen you trust." I did, and I brought my numbers. The ones that kept my eyes down, my distance set, my mouth quiet, and my back turned to exactly one danger at a time. People think horror is teeth and blood. Most nights it's paperwork and posture. You hold the line because the line holds the world. And the world, even when it wears leather shoes that never squeak, still likes being held. I used to think counting was the simplest thing a man could do. Numbers don't lie, they don't improvise, they don't whisper, until the building whispered one back. The second month should have been routine. I reported at 11:15 p.m., checked my gear, flashlight, backup lamp, radio, incident logbook, thermometer. Coffee from Father Michel, thicker than motor oil, scalding enough to keep me honest. "Remember," he said, handing me the thermos, "consistency is the first rule beyond the 5 rules. If you keep rhythm, they keep rhythm." "Yes, Father," I answered. He left me in the dim hallway just like the month before. At 11:59 the sounds began. The polished leather shoes clicking like money had a pulse. The sandals soft as regret. The bare toenails impatient Morse code against stone. The gliding fabric sighing like a curtain over a coffin. And the scaled feet pausing, always pausing. "Security present," I announced. "Permission to maintain post." Acknowledgement, silence, murmurs, then the doors closed, 5 in. I logged it 12:04 a.m., 5 attendees present, the corridor settled. I walked my patrol. The thermometer read 58 degrees. By 12:30, 55, by 1:00, 53. A 2-degree drop every half hour, enough to make the marble sweat condensation again. This time, the condensation didn't bead into random shapes. It formed numbers. The first streak bent into a 6. I wiped it off with my sleeve, heart hammering. Maybe a trick of the draft, maybe not. At 112, the second number appeared, 7. I logged it. Condensation anomaly. Window east corridor. Number formed, 7. The air felt heavier after I wrote it down, like the building approved my honesty. At 140, the elevator activated on its own. I stood by the junction, lamp on the floor. Doors opened. No one visible, but the floor indicator glowed B3, a level I'd never seen. My logbook has only 2 basements, B1, B2. I wrote, elevator anomaly, destination B3 not on blueprint. The doors closed, the car descended. I counted steps on my patrol to steady myself. 84 tiles to the southern corner, 32 back, 66 along the west. Numbers are safe. Numbers are true. But at 2:06 my radio hissed with static and gave me a number that wasn't mine. 6, it whispered. I froze. Security present, I said out loud because silence is worse. Permission to maintain route. The radio answered in a voice that was mine and not mine. 7. The hair on my arm stood up like antennae. I shut the radio off, logged the incident, and kept walking. Never run. Running means you've already lost. At 2:44, the scaled feet found me. They stopped mid-corridor. The air above them tilted like a storm cloud had slipped indoors. You are counting, the voice said. Yes, I answered. What number now? I hesitated. My log said 5 entered. My patrol step said 84, 32, 66. The condensation had written 6 and 7. The elevator had gone to B3. The radio had whispered 6, then 7. I said the only number that felt safe. 5. The scaled feet shifted, claws ticking once against marble. The voice lowered like smoke curling into my ear. Good, stay with 5. And they left. At 3:12, I returned to the east corridor. Condensation lined the entire window. Numbers scribbled across it like frantic chalkboard math. 6, 7, 6, 7, 6, 7, over and over, dozens of them. I wiped one row with my sleeve. Fresh ones appeared beneath. Security present, I said, louder this time. Permission to maintain route. The air whispered, acknowledged. 2 voices, unison, from the empty restroom behind me. I didn't turn. Rule 5, never turn your back on more than one. I faced the numbers. I logged it. I walked. By 4:00, the air pressure shifted again. Departure time. The polished shoes exited first, brisker than before. Then the sandals. Then the toenails clacking like an argument, then the glide. Last came the scales. They stopped again at my post. You counted well, the voice said, better than most. Thank you, I answered. Then quieter, 5 is the only safe number, never let it change. And they left. I counted them out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 out, same as in. But the condensation stayed behind, bleeding into one last mark before fading. 6 plus 7 equals 13. Father Michel arrived at dawn with coffee and pastries like the morning was just another morning. He read my report twice. Code 13, he murmured. That hasn't happened in years. What does it mean? I asked. He folded the page carefully. It means they tried to add, but we do not let them add. I thought about the scaled feet, the whisper, the numbers. Why me? I asked. Why the counting? Because, Carter, he said, looking me dead in the eye, when the numbers change, so does the world. And the world isn't ready for 6 or 7 or anything beyond 5. He sipped his coffee. Keep counting, that's your only weapon. I walked home through the Roman dawn, numbers bouncing in my skull like prayer beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the only safe number. And God help us all if that ever changes. That's why Salvator didn't last one night. They told me I'd have a partner for the March session. A civilian contractor, Italian-born but raised in New Jersey. Mid-30s, square jaw, too much cologne for a night shift. He showed up in brand new boots that squeaked every third step, a detail he thought was funny. "Name's Sal," he said, clapping my shoulder like we'd known each other a decade. "So you're the big, scary American who takes this stuff seriously, huh?" I shrugged. "I take rules seriously. That's why I'm still here." He grinned, a little crooked. "Come on, man, I read the file. Don't look at their faces. Don't touch. Count your blessings. It's a game. Secret society, rich folks playing Halloween." I didn't argue. Arguing wastes oxygen. I just repeated the line Father Michel drilled into me. "They're not suggestions. They're survival." He winked. "We'll see." 11:30 p.m. briefing room. Father Michel handed Sal the same leather folder I'd signed a year ago. Heavy paper, 5 rules printed in 4 languages. He made Sal read them aloud. "Rule 1, Sal said, smirking. "Never look directly at their faces. Keep your eyes on their feet or hands. Man, what's the point of security if you can't even look at them?" "Again," Father Michel said. Sal rolled his eyes, but read it again. By the 3rd repetition, the smirk was thinner. He signed the line anyway, tossed the pen down. Piece of cake. We took up post at the marble corridor. Me left, him right. Midnight arrived with its usual orchestra of footsteps. Leather polish, sandals, nails, glide scales. I announced our presence. Sal stood silent, arms crossed. When the scaled feet paused, the voice above them hissed just enough to ice the marrow. "2 tonight," it said. "Yes," I answered. "2 on duty, security present." Sal shifted but stayed quiet. The feet moved on. The doors closed at 12:04, 5 in, patrol route, south corridor first. The fountain gurgled like it hadn't been cleaned in centuries. Someone was there, robes, fabric heavy enough to ripple the air, standing inches from the water, unmoving. Protocol, announce, always announce. I opened my mouth, but Sal beat me to it. "Hey, everything good here?" he asked, casual as a mall cop checking on teenagers. The figure turned. I didn't see its face. My eyes were locked on the tiles. But I heard Sal's breath falter, sharp like a lung collapsing. His boots squeaked once, then stilled. My voice cut in, hard, rehearsed. "Security present, 2 personnel. Request permission to continue patrol." The figure's voice came back slow, resonant, with something like hunger underneath. "Acknowledged. Train your partner better." It turned back to the fountain. We walked. Sal didn't say a word until we reached the corner. Then he grabbed my arm. What the hell was that? His face had no color. His eyes wouldn't focus. "What did you see?" I asked. He swallowed. "Doesn't matter. Rules exist for a reason." At 2:00 a.m., Sal stopped speaking altogether. He followed me like a shadow that forgot how to be human. Shoulders rigid, eyes straight ahead, lips pressed so tight they went white. By 4:00, the meeting ended. Attendees filed out, shoes, sandals, nails, glide, scales. The scaled feet paused again. "The second one blinked," the voice said. I didn't answer. Rule 4, only respond when spoken to. They left, 5 out, same as in. At dawn, Father Michel read my report. He turned to Sal. "Do you request continuation on this assignment?" Sal shook his head before the sentence was finished. "Day shift, anything, just not this." Request granted, effective immediately. As he packed up his gear, I asked one more time. "What did you see?" He zipped his bag without looking at me. "You don't want to know," he said. Then softer, "I don't want to know either." He walked out into the Roman sunlight like a man climbing out of a grave. I never saw him again. Working alone didn't feel like isolation after that. It felt like balance restored. Because the rules are jealous things. They don't share well. And the building knows when someone blinks. 3 days before the April session, Father Michel called me into his office. Not the briefing hallway, the actual office with windows. Windows meant seriousness. There will be additional attendees this month, he said, pouring 2 glasses of red wine like it was part of the paperwork. The meeting may run longer, and most importantly, there may be visitors not party to the regular arrangement. He slid a second folder across the desk. Same heavy paper, same multilingual print, but new rules, special protocol. 1. If asked to deliver a message, refuse politely and direct them to Father Michel. 2. If you observe physical altercations, radio for backup but do not intervene. 3. If offered gifts or payment, decline and report. 4. If electrical systems fail, use manual lighting only. 5. If you smell sulfur or burning metal, evacuate immediately and call the emergency line. These exist because territorial disputes sometimes arise, he explained. Different groups, different interests. Usually they negotiate peacefully. Sometimes they do not. I read them aloud 3 times the way he insisted with the original 5. Then I signed. Good, he said. Bring the pen you trust. The night of the meeting, thunderstorm rolled over Rome like a warning drum. Rain battered the windows so hard it sounded like applause for something no one wanted to see. Lightning flashed every few minutes, bleaching the corridors white for a heartbeat, then handing them back to darkness. I arrived early, checked batteries, backup lamps, radios, logged temperatures. The marble floors were slick with humidity. At 11:30, the first group arrived, polished leather shoes, the ones I'd come to associate with authority. They paused near my post. Guard, the voice above them said. Tonight may present challenges. Maintain protocols regardless of what you observe. Understood, I answered. At midnight sharp, the second group arrived. New, boots with thick soles, absorbing sound instead of making it. They walked like soldiers, every step deliberate, their formation so precise it made the corridor itself feel sloppy. One boot pair stopped in front of me. You are the regular guard, a flat, accentless voice said. Yes, you will observe neutrality tonight. Yes. They moved on. At 12:15, the third group arrived late. Voices arguing before they even reached the hall. Footsteps erratic, fast, slow, dragging. Some barefoot despite the cold floor. One of them muttered in English without me asking. Stay clear of the eastern corridor tonight. I logged it. The meeting began with raised voices. Usually the doors kept everything muffled, polite. Not tonight. I heard languages collide, words like weapons. 1 hour in, the lights flickered. Every bulb, the corridor strobed like a bad dream. My logbook notes, 0107 power disturbance. Duration, 30 seconds. 2 hours in. Footsteps echoed from the eastern corridor. The same place I was warned about. I stood at the intersection, announced myself loud and clear. Security patrol requesting permission to proceed. The reply came from somewhere deeper in the dark. Denied, maintain current position. So I did. I stood there 20 minutes hearing noises no corridor should host. Scraping, tapping, something heavy being dragged, furniture legs shrieking across stone. At 2:30, my radio dissolved into static. Not the soft hiss of interference, the violent crackle of metal tearing. Backup comms went down too. I noted the failure, switched to manual patrol rhythm. At 4:30, half an hour past the usual dismissal, the doors opened. The polished leather shoes came first, faster than usual. "Guard," the voice said, "document tonight as Code 7. Father Michel will understand." Then the boots, still in perfect formation, silent, unbroken. They ignored me, but I still announced myself. The late group took nearly an hour to leave. Some limped, some supported each other. One voice muttered as they passed, "Successful evening." Tone said otherwise. When dawn broke, Father Michel appeared with coffee and fresh pastries like nothing had happened. He read my incident log twice before speaking. "You performed excellently under difficult circumstances." "What is a Code 7?" I asked. He folded the paper, hands steady. "A disagreement resolved without permanent damage to facility or participants. Your neutrality prevented escalation." I thought about the scraping, the dragging, the limping feet. "Does that mean it could have been worse?" "Yes," he said simply, "much worse." He sipped his coffee. "You kept the number stable, that is enough." I walked home through rain-washed streets, thunder still muttering over the horizon. I thought about the rule additions, the boots, the warning about the Eastern Corridor. And I wondered how long usually peaceful would hold. February came with unusual instructions. Father Michel asked me to report an hour earlier than normal. "There will be a special attendee this month," he said, sliding a laminated card across the desk. "They requested private consultation before the gathering." The card read, "Special Rule 6. If the early attendee asks questions about your personal life, family, or background, respond only with information not available." Father Michel folded his hands. "This one has a tendency to collect details. The church prefers privacy." "Yes, Father." "You will escort them from the main entrance to my office. Then to the conference hall when called. Standard distance, standard protocol. Remember the 6th rule." I signed. 11:00 p.m. Main entrance. Storm still fresh in the air, streets outside slick with rain. I stood in position, lamp low, eyes focused at floor level. At 11:05, the heavy doors opened without creak. The first thing I saw was footwear, boots, expensive, ornate, too detailed for mass production. Exotic leather, engraved metal buckles, straps that looked decorative but felt functional. They made no sound against the marble floor. None. "Security escort ready to proceed to Father Michel's office," I announced. "Excellent," a cheerful voice replied. "Punctuality is a virtue I admire." We walked. I counted my steps, watched the boots. "You have worked here for quite some time," the voice said. "Information not available," I answered, a low chuckle. "Ah, they briefed you, refreshing. Proper preparation is rare." We reached the office. I knocked 3 times, announced our arrival. Escort completed to Father Michel's office. Inside, the consultation lasted 30 minutes. I patrolled outside, eyes down, ears catching fragments, words in multiple languages, Father Michel's voice tighter than usual. At 12:30, the call came through the radio. "Escort to conference hall." I entered, announced myself. "Ready to escort." The boots shifted closer, too close. I stepped back to reset distance. "I have a proposal," the cheerful voice said. I didn't answer. Rule 4, speak only when spoken to. But it had spoken to me. Father Michel's voice cut in. "Tommaso, this individual wishes to make an offer." They insisted it be delivered directly. The boots gleamed in my peripheral. "Your reputation for reliability has reached certain circles," the voice said. "We can offer you employment, triple your compensation, greater freedom, fewer rules." I kept my eyes on the buckles. I am satisfied with my current position. No hesitation. No. Why? Rules create stability. I prefer stability. The boots shifted, then turned back toward the window. How unusual. Most men would choose wealth over order. Perhaps Father Michel was right to value you. I said nothing. Escort duties resumed. At 4:00 a.m., after the meeting ended, the boots paused again at my post. One last question, the voice said. Why refuse better pay and more freedom? I considered carefully. Because stability protects more than me, it protects everyone. Silence, then, interesting, structure serving purpose beyond control. Very few understand that, very few at all. And they left, 5 out, same as in. At dawn, Father Michel debriefed me with coffee, eyes tired. You handled that correctly, he said. Such offers are not uncommon. The church values loyalty. Your paycheck will reflect that. What kind of work was offered? I asked. He poured more coffee. Security for gatherings without rules, less regulation, higher pay, much higher danger, few survive long. I thought of the boots, the cheerful voice, the promise of money. And I thought of Rule 1, Rule 2, Rule 3, Rule 4, Rule 5, rules that had kept me alive. I'll stay here, I said. Good. Father Michel said, good. That morning, walking home through the Vatican alleys, the sunrise painted the wet stone streets gold. And I realized temptation wasn't always breaking rules. Sometimes, temptation was the promise you didn't have to follow them anymore. But that's the most dangerous promise of all. After the February meeting, the night of the offer, the tone of my work shifted. Subtle things, easy to miss if you weren't counting. The sandals no longer glided past in silence. One night they paused, almost as if waiting for me to finish announcing before continuing. The leather shoes, always first in, last out, began to tilt ever so slightly toward me when I spoke, like a commander acknowledging a saluting soldier. Even the impatient toenails, always clicking like typewriter keys, slowed once when I called out, as if tapping approval instead of irritation. And the scales nodded. I couldn't see it, but the air above them bent, the sound of claws against stone softened, and for the first time I felt less like prey and more like part of the arrangement. Father Michel noticed too. They're extending courtesy, he said over coffee one dawn. Courtesy? I asked. Yes, they respect order, and they respect those who maintain it, but don't mistake courtesy for safety. Predators groom their prey before eating. Courtesy is a test. March meeting, routine patrol, East Corridor condensation again, but no numbers this time, just a long vertical streak, almost like a finger dragging downward in thought. As I logged it, a voice spoke from behind. Guard. Scaled feet pausing. Yes. You refused the offer. Yes. Why? I hesitated. Rule 4 allowed yes/no, but I wanted clarity, wanted to lock the meaning into words. Because rules protect more than me, I said carefully. The voice lingered like smoke, refusing to leave. Then, correct. And it moved on. By April, the gliding fabric whispered as it passed, acknowledged. By May, the sandals murmured something that sounded like Latin blessing. By June, even the impatient toenails tapped out a rhythm that almost matched my walking pace. Courtesy, but courtesy from them didn't feel like kindness from humans. It was the kind you see in wolves circling a fire, respecting the flame not because they like it, but because they understand it burns. I was the flame, small but bright enough to keep the circle at bay. Then came July. Halfway through my patrol near the small chapel at the south corner, I announced myself. Silence answered. I repeated, louder. This time a voice spoke back, but not from one throat. Many dozens maybe, all at once layered. Acknowledged. The air pressed heavy like 100 invisible heads bowing. My skin crawled, every instinct screaming to run, but I held my line. 2 meters distance, eyes down, voice steady. Continuing patrol, I said. The voices receded, melting back into the chapel's shadows. When I reported it at dawn, Father Michel closed his eyes, rubbing his temples. "They're testing you," he said. "For what? For consistency, for weakness, for cracks. Am I passing?" He looked at me over the rim of his coffee. "So far, courtesy from predators isn't a gift, it's recognition. They recognize you as part of the balance, a function of the rules. But predators never forget what you are. You're not their equal, you're tolerated. And tolerance lasts only as long as you don't blink." It was the August meeting when I learned what first aid really meant. 2:00 a.m. sharp, midway through patrol, the usual rhythm of counting and announcing. South corridor near the chapel. I turned a corner and announced, "Security patrol, permission to proceed." A pause, then a voice closer than expected. "Acknowledged, assistance required." Scaled feet. Standing near the wall, weight shifted oddly. I kept my eyes low. There was a dark smear on the marble, leading to the claws. "Medical," the voice said. "Now." I felt my pulse climb. Rule 3, no physical contact. Rule 2, maintain distance. Rule 4, speak only when spoken to. Rule 5, count. "Yes," I said. I guided them toward the first aid alcove, 2 meters apart, every step calculated. My logbook under my arm, pen ready to record. At the station, I opened the cabinet with my left hand, eyes still fixed on the scaled feet. Alcohol pads, bandages, antiseptic, nothing fancy. "Apply," the voice said. Rule 3 echoed in my head, no contact, ever. I set the supplies on the counter and stepped back. "Available," I said. The scaled feet shifted. One claw pressed against gauze. The antiseptic fizzed unnaturally, as if reacting not with blood but with the air itself. The bandage soaked dark, then shimmered faintly like oil on water. "Acceptable," the voice said. "Escort back." We walked. I announced at every threshold. My notes trembled only once. At dawn, I handed Father Michel the report. He read it slowly, then looked up. "You handled that correctly," he said. "Basic aid only, nothing more." "What would have happened if I tried more?" I asked. "Your blood would have mixed with theirs," he said, "and the rules don't protect you then." I didn't ask further. Some answers you don't chase. That morning, as I walked home, the smell of antiseptic clung to my hands even after I scrubbed them raw. And I understood something new. The rules weren't just about survival. They were about boundaries. Cross a boundary and you stop being neutral. You become part of their world, and no one survives long in their world. Minor injury. Major lesson. It was late September, after a particularly loud meeting, raised voices carrying through even the thick conference doors. Dawn broke heavy, clouds pressing low over Vatican roofs. I filed my report as always: temperatures, sounds, anomalies, arrivals, and departures. This time, Father Michel didn't dismiss me with coffee and a nod. Instead, he gestured toward his office. "Come," he said. "There's something you need to understand." Inside, he unrolled a large map across his desk. Vatican City in the center, Rome fanning outward, then Europe. Red ink scarred the parchment in blotches and lines, some neat circles, others sprawling like burns. "These," he said, tapping the red zones with a weathered finger, "are places where agreements failed, where meetings never happened, or where rules were broken." I leaned closer. Cities I recognized, some with histories of riots, unexplained fires, Neighborhoods that vanished overnight in news reports no one followed up. Each mark, he continued, represents hundreds, sometimes thousands of civilians displaced, and they never know why. They think it's politics, crime, bad luck. They don't see what lies underneath. I swallowed. So these meetings, they're not just rituals, they're containment. Exactly, neutral ground for negotiation. Without them, disputes spill into the world you and I call ordinary. The rules don't just protect you, Tommaso, they protect millions. He poured 2 cups of bitter coffee, slid one toward me. That's why neutrality is sacred. You're not just a guard, you are the spine that keeps the structure standing. That night on patrol, the corridors felt different. Every step echoed with weight. When I announced myself, it wasn't just to be polite, it was to keep the lines clear between worlds. At 1:00 a.m., condensation marked the east corridor again. Not numbers this time, shapes, circles, overlapping like territories on a map. My stomach tightened. "Security patrol," I said. "Permission to proceed." From the shadows, a voice answered, acknowledged, boundaries maintained. I logged the words carefully. Weeks passed. October. November. The rhythm returned, but my perspective didn't. Every footstep past my post was no longer just strange footwear, it was diplomacy embodied. The leather shoes weren't just polished, they represented authority, order. The impatient toenails were instability, barely contained. The scales were leadership, arbitration. They weren't guests, they were ambassadors, and I was border control. One dawn, after another 4-hour shift without incident, Father Michel poured wine instead of coffee. "You look troubled," he said. "I see the red zones when I close my eyes," I admitted. "Good," he said. "That means you understand what's at stake. Fear without context breeds panic. Fear with context breeds vigilance. Stay vigilant." He raised his glass. "To vigilance." I raised mine, the bitter taste of wine burning down. Walking home through Rome that morning, I no longer saw streets, churches, and markets. I saw fault lines, thin walls holding back something vast and hungry. And I realized peace was never free. It was negotiated, monthly, on marble floors, by things that wore sandals, scales, and shoes polished bright enough to blind you if you dared to look up. It happened in December. The city was heavy with pilgrims, holiday crowds pressing at the Vatican gates, tour buses parked in long lines. Vendors sold rosaries and cheap wine. Security doubled on the outer walls, but inside my job remained the same. Midnight to dawn, 5 rules keep the line between worlds. At 12:47 a.m., halfway through my patrol, I heard it, footsteps in the west corridor. Wrong rhythm, too light, too hesitant. Not the shuffle of sandals, not the polished clip of leather, not the impatient nails. Human, I froze. "Security patrol, permission to proceed," I called, voice steady. No answer. I rounded the corner and saw him, an old man in a pilgrim's cloak, silver hair, clutching a wooden rosary. His sandals were cracked, not ancient ceremonial, just worn with years of walking. He squinted at me like I was the intruder. "I got lost," he whispered. "The doors were open, I just wanted to pray." My stomach dropped. This was the worst-case scenario Father Michel had warned about, an innocent who didn't belong in the wrong place at the worst time. Behind me I heard movement, heavy, non-human. The meeting was in session. If any of them found him here. "Sir," I said quietly, "you need to come with me." He shook his head. "No, I must reach the chapel. I was called here." "Not tonight," I said. My voice cracked with urgency. "Follow me now." He clutched his rosary tighter. "Do you know the name Michael?" he asked suddenly. The hall went colder. I hadn't told him my name, and he hadn't asked. From the far end of the corridor, footsteps approached, leather shoes polished, commanding, patient. I stepped in front of the pilgrim, eyes down. Security present, unauthorized civilian escorting out. The shoes stopped. Silence above them, heavy as judgment. Proceed quickly. I moved the pilgrim fast, arm guiding but never touching, 2 meters even with him. I herded him through the north stairwell, out past a locked gate that was mysteriously unlocked into a courtyard where the air smelled human again. "Stay here," I ordered. He looked at me with pale eyes, murmured, "The Archangel watches." Then he walked into the shadows and I never saw him again. At dawn, my report filled 3 pages. Unauthorized entry, civilian pilgrim, potential breach, dialogue, escort. Father Michel read it all, face hard. "You did well," he said, "but this is troubling, very troubling." "Who was he?" I asked. "We don't know," he said flatly, "and that is the problem." He folded the paper carefully as if folding the memory itself. "Boundaries don't only hold because of rules, Tommaso. They hold because no one crosses them. Last night someone did." I walked home through the city at sunrise. Pilgrims filled the streets, faces lifted toward the basilica. Any of them could have been him. None of them were, and I understood. Sometimes the line between our world and theirs doesn't fail because of demons. It fails because of us. It happened in March of my 3rd year. Routine night, same corridors, same count. By then I knew every tile and shadow of the patrol path, 84 steps south, 32 back, 66 west. Familiarity was my shield, but familiarity breeds complacency, and complacency invites traps. At 1:17 a.m., during my second sweep of the east corridor, I saw it, a door, not one I had ever logged, not on the map Father Michel had shown me. It stood flush with the wall, heavy wood with an iron handle, darker than the stone around it, as if the building itself didn't want it there. The problem wasn't that it was unlocked. The problem was that it existed. I stopped 5 paces away, eyes fixed at floor level, announced myself. "Security patrol, permission to proceed." "Silence," I repeated, louder. This time a whisper slipped through the corridor, not from behind the door, from everywhere. "Enter." Rule 2 said always wait for acknowledgement. Rule 3 said no contact. Rule 5 said never turn your back on more than one. But no rule explicitly said don't open new doors. The whisper was bait. I logged it, 1:17, unauthorized door manifested, whisper instructing entry, no acknowledgement. I kept my distance, continued patrol, but I felt its weight on my back for the rest of the night. Next month, same place. The door again, this time slightly open. Just a crack, cold air bleeding out like cellar breath. My flashlight beam skimmed the floor, the crack widened without touch. From inside, tapping like fingernails on wood, counting. "Security patrol," I said, "permission to proceed." The tapping stopped. Then softly, 555, I walked away. I didn't run. When I reported it at dawn, Father Michel's face hardened. "You didn't open it?" he asked. "No." "Good. Never open doors that appear where they shouldn't. They're not for you." "What's behind them?" I asked. He poured coffee, didn't meet my eyes. "Nothing that belongs here. The door is a test. If you try the handle, you're no longer neutral, and neutrality is the only thing keeping you alive." Weeks later, the pilgrims returned. Tourists, prayers, candles. I walked through the streets on my way home, watching hundreds of doors in the city open and close. Shops, churches, homes. Doors with keys, doors with hinges, doors that belonged. But in my mind, I saw only that one, the 5th door. The one that wasn't supposed to exist. And I realized, sometimes the hardest rule isn't survival, it's resisting curiosity, because curiosity is the real invitation. And some invitations are traps you never come back from. It was late spring when Father Michel warned me. The administration wants oversight, he said, his tone flat. They've requested an internal audit of the arrangement. An audit, I asked. Of demons. Of you, he corrected. The auditor arrived the following week. Not clergy, not military. A man in a gray suit with sharp glasses and a clipboard that never left his hands. He introduced himself only as Signor Rinaldi. I'm here to ensure accountability, he said, shaking my hand longer than needed. Standard protocol, nothing for you to worry about. I didn't believe him. That night he shadowed me on patrol. He scoffed when I kept my eyes down. He sighed when I announced my presence at thresholds. He muttered under his breath every time I stopped to log temperature. These rituals are theater, he whispered. What are you really protecting? Boundaries, I said. He chuckled. Boundaries built on superstition. I intend to show the department that this job could be done with half the staff and no silly rulebook. I didn't argue. I just kept walking, counting, announcing. At 12:30 a.m., the first encounter came. Leather shoes, polished, deliberate. The voice above them spoke. Guard, neutral presence confirmed. I announced myself, steady. Rinaldi rolled his eyes. Ridiculous. Then, before I could stop him, he raised his head, looked directly upward. I felt the air shift like a blade pressing against my neck. Quickly I cut in. 2 personnel, security present, permission to maintain route. The leather shoes paused, then acknowledged. They moved on. The corridor exhaled. Rinaldi's face had gone pale. His pen trembled against his clipboard, but he said nothing. At 2:00 a.m. near the eastern corridor we heard gliding fabric. Heavy, slow, I announced. Silence. Rinaldi scoffed. This is absurd. He cleared his throat and barked into the dark. Identify yourself. The gliding stopped. The air chilled. 2 voices answered at once, layered. Acknowledged, guard present, not us, them. I gripped my radio, fingers ready to log. Continuing patrol, I said firmly. The gliding resumed. Rinaldi swallowed hard. He didn't speak again until dawn. At the debrief, he filed his notes. The protocols are excessive, he said carefully, but perhaps necessary. After he left, Father Michel poured coffee into my hands. You kept him alive, he said. He almost broke Rule 1. He almost broke all of them. Yes, Father Michel said, and he will not be the last. Humans are always more dangerous when they think they know better. That morning, walking home past the bustling markets, I realized something strange. The demons never tested me the way the humans did, because demons understood rules. It was people who thought they didn't need them. Rinaldi returned a month later. No warning, no explanation, just appeared at the gate with his clipboard and sharp smile. This time, he said, I won't just observe, I'll prove these theatrics are meaningless. My stomach tightened. These rules keep us alive. He tapped his glasses, or they keep you obedient. That night the corridors seemed restless. The air damp, stone sweating. Every step echoed louder than it should. At 1:12 a.m. I heard sandals. Slow, deliberate, a meeting was breaking. Security patrol, I called. Permission to proceed. Acknowledgement came, proceed. Rinaldi sneered, watch this. Before I could stop him, he stepped forward, eyes lifted, chin high. He spoke directly into the unseen presence. Identify yourself by name. The corridor froze, the sandals halted, then a sound like stone grinding against stone, low and angry. "You break neutrality," the voice said, layered and heavy. I dropped to one knee, eyes locked on the floor. "Correction, civilian violation. Guard remains neutral. Guard observes protocol." The air shifted, the presence paused. Then impossibly it addressed me. "Guard acknowledged, protected." The sandals moved again, fading into silence. Rinaldi staggered back, face pale, clipboard trembling. At 3:00 a.m., another manifestation, toenails clicking impatiently on marble, always unsettling. I called the rule. Rinaldi's voice cut in, mocking. "We know you're there, show yourself." The nails stopped, then laughter, cruel, echoing. "You break neutrality," the voice hissed. I raised my voice, firm. "Guard neutral, observer irrelevant, proceed." The laughter died, the nails receded, my whole body shook. I realized my voice had carried authority not over them but through them, like the rules themselves were speaking with me. At dawn, Rinaldi filed no notes. He walked out, pale and silent, clipboard tucked tight to his chest. I sat across from Father Michel, coffee untouched in my hands. "They acknowledged me," I whispered. "They said I was protected." Father Michel nodded slowly. "Because you are, not because of who you are, Tommaso, but because of what you represent. The guard is not a man, it is a role. As long as you keep the rules, the role protects you." "And Rinaldi?" I asked. "He broke the rules," Father Michel said simply, "and he survived only because you did not." That morning, as I walked home, the city seemed sharper, doors heavier, windows more fragile. The world balanced on ritual, not certainty. For the first time, I understood the truth. The rules weren't for me. They were for everyone else. And if I ever failed, it wouldn't just be my death. It would be an invitation. It began at 2:04 a.m., a wrong sound, not sandals, not polished shoes, not toenails, something heavier like wet hooves on marble dragging. The corridor vibrated with it. The air smelled of iron and mildew like a cellar flooded with blood. I froze at the checkpoint. My voice cracked, but I forced it steady. "Security patrol, permission to proceed." No acknowledgement, just a hiss like steam from a broken pipe. No permission needed. Every muscle in my body screamed to run. But Rule 2 was clear: never move without acknowledgement, so I stood there. My throat tight, radio in hand, waiting for a signal that never came. The shape emerged at the end of the hall, not walking, crawling, slithering, pulling itself forward with hands that bent the wrong way. Its body filled the corridor, blotting out the far wall. "Proceed," I said again. It laughed, a low, wet gurgle. "Rules do not bind me," it croaked. For the first time I doubted the book. What if this was it, the end? Then I remembered something Father Michel had said long ago when I asked why the rules mattered. They matter because you believe they do. Belief is the boundary, so I planted my boots, drew breath, and shouted louder than I ever had. "Guard present, neutral, boundaries acknowledged, return to meeting." The thing stopped, its limbs twitched. For a moment, nothing. Then, from behind it, voices. Layers and layers, from sandals and shoes and robes unseen. "Return, return, return." The creature writhed, screamed, its body folded into itself like paper burning backward, and it was gone. When silence fell, my legs gave out. I slid to the floor, heart hammering. My radio clicked on by itself. Father Michel's voice: "You held the line." I almost broke, I whispered. "That is the test," he said. "The breach always comes. What matters is that you didn't step through it." At dawn, the Vatican bells rang louder than usual. Pilgrims filled the square, their prayers floating like smoke. They had no idea how close the night had come to unraveling. And as I walked home, shaking, I understood something new. The rules aren't just survival tactics. They're the last threads keeping the world sewn shut. If they ever snap, the breach won't just be mine. It will be everyone's. After the breach, I couldn't sleep. For days, I replayed the sound of that crawling thing, the way it laughed when it said rules don't bind me. Finally, I asked Father Michel for answers. I need to know, I said. What are we guarding? Why these rooms? Why the rules? He stared at me a long time, eyes bloodshot from nights of prayer. Then he poured 2 cups of bitter coffee and sat down. You've earned at least part of the truth, he said. The Vatican is not just a church, he began. It is a vault, a place where failures are hidden. Failures? I asked. He nodded. Not of faith, of exorcism. The word hit me like ice water. When exorcisms don't succeed, he continued, the entities are not destroyed, they are displaced. Bound, contained, these rooms hold what was left behind, what could not be cleansed. I thought of the sandals, the shoes, the gliding fabric. You mean they live here? They are here because they were summoned here, because the priests who fought them could not banish them completely. Binding was the only option. And the rules? He leaned forward, voice low. The rules are not just instructions, they are the treaty. Agreements written in ritual, recognized by both sides. As long as you follow them, the entities stay contained. Break them and you tear at the seams of the binding. I sat back, shaking. So I'm not guarding rooms. I'm guarding failures. You're guarding consequences, he corrected. Consequences of pride, of priests who thought they could win every battle. Why tell me now? He rubbed his temples. Because the breach means the bindings weaken. Every year the seams fray, and one day soon the rules may no longer hold. Silence filled the room, only the ticking of an old clock. Finally, I asked, and when that day comes? Father Michel's eyes glistened with something like sorrow. Then the guard must decide. Do you still stand neutral, or do you choose a side? That night, walking home, the city looked different. Every doorway felt thinner, every shadow heavier. For years, I thought the rules kept me safe. But now I understood they weren't just about survival. They were about stalling something bigger. And time was running out. Began with the sandals. I knew the rhythm, soft leather measured steps, but this time they came hours too early. Midnight, not 2. Security patrol, I called. Permission to proceed. For the first time in years, no answer came. The steps just kept coming. At Checkpoint Delta, I heard 2 sets of shoes at once, polished leather and sandals overlapping out of sync. The air grew thick with static, like a storm pressed between stone walls. Identify presence, I tried, was trembling. 2 voices answered, layered and jagged. Guard acknowledged, guard denied. Both at once. My pen slipped against the logbook. My hand shook so badly I couldn't form the letters. At 2:45 a.m., the eastern corridor, the one I had always avoided, lit with a dull red glow. Fabric dragged across stone, slow and heavy. But this time, the sound bled into every hall like the whole building was wrapped in one endless robe. I announced the patrol. The voice that answered was wrong, too loud, too close. Guard, we see you even when you do not announce. My throat tightened. Rule 3, never assume you are unseen, flashed in my mind. The rulebook wasn't advice anymore, it was unraveling prophecy. At 3:10 a.m., the temperature log failed. My thermometer needle spun wildly, shaking between extremes, -10, then boiling, then dead still. The paper warped in my hand. Ink bled across the page until the letters dissolved. I'd never seen it before, the rules literally dissolving beneath my fingers. I radioed Father Michel, static, then half a sentence. Tommaso, hold fast, they will. The rest vanished into crackling silence. By 4:00 a.m., the halls were alive. Footsteps overlapped, voices collided, laughter and muttering rose from every corner. Rules meant to separate each presence were collapsing into chaos. I pressed my forehead to the cold stone wall and whispered the only words I could still believe. Guard neutral, guard present. The noise swelled, and for the first time in my service I felt the stone beneath my boots tremble. Dawn came gray and sickly. The bells rang, but softer, like muffled by unseen hands. Walking home, I realized the collapse wasn't a single event. It was already happening. The seams were tearing, and soon there would be no rules left to follow. I reported for duty one final time. The halls breathed heavy as if the whole Vatican was holding its lungs. Father Michel met me at the threshold. His face looked older, skin waxy in the torchlight. "This will be the last watch," he said. "The bindings are frayed past repair." My voice cracked. "Then why send me in?" "Because someone must stand until the end, and because endings can sometimes be bargains." He placed the rule book in my hand, but the pages were blank, ink bled away. Only the cover remained. "You are the rule now," he whispered. Inside, the chaos was total. Sandals, shoes, robes, nails, crawling limbs all at once. Sounds colliding, overlapping, flooding every corridor. My logbook fell uselessly from my hands. The radio screamed with a dozen voices at once, each mocking, each pleading, and then silence. A single presence stood before me. No sandals, no robes, no crawling, just shape. It spoke with all their voices. "Neutrality is over, choose." I wanted to run, I wanted to hide, but I remembered the breach, the collapse, the way the city seemed thinner each dawn. If I chose a side, I would become one of them. If I chose nothing, the seams would rip open and spill into the world. So I did the only thing left. I lifted the blank book, pressed it to my chest, and I spoke. "I am guard, I am neutral. My choice is no choice. My role is the wall." The presence recoiled, screeched, the air shook with fury, and then it folded inward, collapsed like paper consumed by fire. One by one the sounds receded, sandals fading, shoes vanishing, robes dragged back into silence, until there was nothing but me and stone and silence. When dawn came, the halls were empty, too empty. Father Michel was gone, his office stripped bare. No notes, no coffee cup, no trace he'd ever lived. I walked into the square. Pilgrims prayed, bells rang, Rome carried on, but the city looked thinner. The doors felt fragile, and I knew the truth. I hadn't won. I had only delayed. Now, years later, I no longer write in the logbook. I write here for you, because one day the bindings will snap for good, and when they do, someone will find this record, and someone will have to decide if they are willing to stand where I stood, alone, neutral against the tide. Not a hero, not a priest, just a guard.